The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Suckling on the teat of tech.
With Paul Brislen.
Yeah, talking high tech with twitter.com/Paul Brislen. G'day there, Paul.
Good morning, how are you?
Very, very well indeed. Now, some topics today. First of all, let's cover off the earthquake because in your day job, you're the communications man for Vodafone.
That's right.
And one thing Vodafone had to manage on Saturday morning was keeping the network up and running.
That's right, with the earthquake going on. Yes. 6:30 in the morning I get the first of probably about 50 phone calls that day from various journalists about the earthquake. We have a process here, an emergency management team, an EMT gets called, and all the relevant people are included so that we can cross off things like the network, communications to staff, communications to customers, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I sat in on that, and I've got to say I was just blown away by the kind of work that the network guys were doing down there. So we had roughly, I think it was about 100 cell sites in and around Greater Christchurch that not one of the cell sites was damaged, I'm glad to say. Nothing broke, but of course the power was shut off. So they all went over to battery backup at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Now, batteries only last for 3 to 8 hours, so we were against the clock to try and get some alternate power source down to these sites. So we've got a whole bunch of generators scattered around the country. So then it became a mission of moving the generators around, making sure you've got coverage in other places because you just don't know what else is going to happen. These things tend to come in waves, and we've seen other earthquakes follow on, and generally try and move things around. And I was blown away. These guys, the network guys, were picking themselves up, dusting themselves off after an earthquake of that sort of magnitude, checking their families were okay, and then straight out to check on the network because they know how important it is for all the other relief work to make sure that the communications network is in place.
Exactly. Now, have you got any data or any indication on what the load on the network was at that time?
No, it didn't get too bad at all. I had to slap Television New Zealand down a wee bit because they were saying, and quick, if you just take some video with your cell phone and send it in to us, at a time when we were asking everybody to stay off the network as much as possible.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was pretty seamless. I don't think we lost signal at all in the area. We had trouble with fixed line stuff, of course, because when the power goes off, if your landline is on a cordless phone, you suddenly realise that there's no power, so your phone doesn't work. So you do need to consider buying a cheap corded phone, curly corded phone, just to have in a cupboard somewhere, ready for this kind of thing.
Of course, that's the worry with VoIP as well, I suppose.
Well, it is. You've got to have. That is the beauty of cell phones, isn't it? That it's an alternate network. So if one's down, hopefully the other's up. And with SIM cards these days, of course, you can swap into a new phone as soon as the battery dies. So
was it okay for my mum to be texting me to be texting my mum?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was telling people on the day was, look, if you've got to make a call, keep it short if you can. If you've already made contact and you're just touching base, send a text and try and stick to text. Text messages take up very little room on the network, and they're tenacious little things. They try to get through, no matter what. They fit into all kinds of small nooks and crannies, and they don't take up much room.
Yeah. And
they keep trying for up to 3 days. Now, of course, if you are in an emergency, you've got to ring an emergency number. Don't hesitate. Just make that call. But for the general catch-up, whoa, did you feel that? Are you guys all okay? Then send a text if you can.
That's all good.
Of course, if you don't hear, then immediately phone them and make sure everybody's okay. But in the first instance, keep the load low and send a text. Yeah, it was remarkable work. We had one chap who his family wouldn't let him out of their site. He said, everybody's okay, right, I'm off to check on the network. And they said, no, Dad, you can't.
Huh.
You've got to stay with us. And he said, well, no. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, the entire family got rugged up, bundled into the van, and he drove around checking the network sites in his area with his whole family in the car because they wouldn't let him out of their site. It must just be terrifying for the kids in particular.
Yeah.
So, my hat's off to them. Those guys have worked really, really hard. And right across all the networks, all the different guys. Mercury, the electricity company down there, the phone companies have just really pulled the stops out.
Yeah, good job. Now, looking towards, I guess, the future for communications in New Zealand and the backbone and the infrastructure of it, there has been some announcements and movements on what's happening with the Crown Fibre plan.
That's right. So this is the $1.5 billion Crown Fibre investment. They're talking about, you give us $1.5 billion of government money, companies will chip in an equal amount, and with $3 billion or so, we will build the future network of the country, the backbone, the fibre optic network that will roll out to, I think it's about 60 to 70% of all houses within the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, there have been lots and lots of political manoeuvrings over this. Telecom came up with a bid for the entire country and said, if you do this, we will split the company in two. We'll have a network company and a retail company. That bid hasn't been successful. The government has appointed Crown Fibre Holdings, CFH, to look after all of this, and they proposed 33, I think it is, different regions. That's somewhat consolidated now, but they've awarded 3 regions outside the main centres, but still 3 regions to consortiums of electricity companies for the most part.
Okay, so is this why companies like in Auckland, like Vector, have been having these advertisements?
Heavily advertising, yeah. They want the money so that they can build a network. They don't have any intention of being a retail player. This is the sting in the tail of the government's initiative, if you want to call it that, is you can't be a retail player and sell directly to customers and own the network. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
So for Telecom, this was the real angst. They had to decide whether or not they would be willing to split the company in two. And ultimately, eventually, they said yes, they would. But Crown Fibre Holdings have said, well, that's fine, but your pencil's not sharp enough. Your pricing is not where we want it to be. So there's a lot more water to pass under this bridge. But for now, they've awarded 3 of the contracts to electricity lines companies who've said, like Vector, we'll just build a network and then sell to whoever wants to on-sell it.
So one ad on telly that's been puzzling me is the ad for Chorus. Now, the Chorus provides services to all the different telcos, installing broadband connections, all that kind of thing. But they've got these ads on telly, and I'm not sure who they're targeting. I mean, they're saying to consumers, hey, we're the people who do this, but it means nothing to consumers at the end of the day because you have no direct dealings with them.
That's right. They are very much behind the scenes. And Chorus, for those that don't know, is Telecom's network arm. It's just a division of Telecom. However, they do, as you say, support all of the networks. They do work for Vodafone, for a whole raft of different companies. And their play was similar to Vector's, give us the money and we'll build you a world-class network.
Right.
Well, that's, I'm a bit unsure as to why Vector and Telecom were both going down the route of advertising to end users for a product that neither of them will be able to sell to end users.
Yeah.
But that's the way they went. It's all about branding and getting your name out there.
Really?
So,
I mean, that's a lot of expense just to brand to consumers who, in the end, have no say anyway.
That's right. Well, it's a government initiative. So if all of the population of Auckland stood up en masse and said, we want Vector to build our network for us, I'm pretty sure the government would pay a little bit.
But how are we going to, what's
Well, we never were we?
How does that manifest itself?
Yeah, I mean, there was no call to arms. No. We weren't supposed to be marching in the streets or anything.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine Aucklanders would have done that anyway. So, yeah, we tend not to march for much of anything, really.
So really those ads were targeted to a very few small people sitting around a boardroom table.
They were. They absolutely were. and an expensive way of doing it, I would have to say. So, you do want to wonder, but we're talking about a $1.5 billion project that will, in effect, overbuild Telecom's existing copper network. So for Telecom in particular, this is a make or break, do or die moment. This removes all control from Telecom and moves them from the centre of everything and puts them on the edges along with everyone else. So that's a very interesting time. The next few months, as they work out where the rest of the money goes, will be very interesting indeed, because Telecom's threatened to overbuild the network and to compete head-on and offer cutthroat wholesale rates on copper. And for the next 5 or 6 years, the advances in copper technology should keep up with fibre quite nicely.
Okay.
So, it's quite good for those of us who use the internet, though. I imagine we can see a price war.
I can only champion anyone who's going to make things faster for me, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks, Paul.
Thanks, anytime.
Cheers. We were going to be talking about something to do with Google and Google search, but all you really need to do is go to the google.co.nz and type search for anything, and then it'll become very apparent what's going on there.